Hey guys, let's take a look at variables and what they are and how we can use them. I've got 3 demo groups set up here with a couple of demo snaps in each of them, and I'm going to go into group A, and I'm going to go into more, and there's a custom variables entry in the menu. And right now I have nothing defined for group A. I guess what we should talk about is, well, what is a variable? Well, we got you covered if you're ever confused. There's a little blurb here which tells you everything you need to know, but basically they are a container or a bucket that stores things. And so you can have text stored in a variable, or a number stored in a variable, or a true false stored in a variable, and you can change that. Now, let's just create one. That's probably a little easier than trying to explain all of this. Let's create one called product. And it can be text, number, or true and false. We'll leave it at text for now. And the default value, I'm going to say, no product, exclamation mark. On group change, we're not going to deal with this now. We'll just leave it at the default. We'll get into that in a bit. And I'm going to say add variable. So now it's been added. So you can see here, it's put these squiggly lines around it. And so this is how you tell SeekBeak that you'd like to use whatever is in that variable or bucket and show it instead of the actual variable. So for those of you who have done mailing lists and things like that, where it says hello, first name, think of this as kind of the same deal. It's going to replace this with whatever you have in product. Let's go see how this works in practice. Okay, so we'll go into number 1 here, and this is just a demo 360 that I use just to demo things where the background doesn't really matter. In this case, it's a perfect fit. So let's go add. I'm going to add a point hotspot. And you'll see that there's this little icon next to name and next to text. And if I click it, it tells you, hey, this supports dynamic variables. And it gives you a list of built-in ones that the system supports, as well as the new one that says, hey, if your snap group has defined variables, simply use them like this, which is what we saw in the previous screen. So for example, if I change this to hi, and then product, you can see here it's showing what I'm actually typing as I do it. And I'll type the first curly brace, and then as soon as I type the second curly brace, boom, it detects that that's a variable and replaces it. So now it says, hey, no product. Or I can have, you clicked no product, something like that. Okay, so great. That works. And as far as the user's concerned, this is all they ever see, right? They don't see your variables at all. Great. I mean, not very practical currently, but great. So how do you change variables and how do you make these kind of do something? Well, let's create another hotspot. I'll create a point hotspot and I'll just pop it up here. And I'm going to name this one oranges, because when I click this, I want SeekBeak to know that someone is interested in oranges. And so what I can do is I'm going to change this hotspot type to a label. So by default, the default click event doesn't do anything on it, right? However, actions still fire. So I can say, hey, set variable value when someone clicks this. So this is a default action that you can assign to any actions. And I'm going to say, okay, when someone clicks on this hotspot, I'm going to change the variable. What variable? Product. And what am I going to change it to? I'm going to change it to orange, with an exclamation mark, just so it matches this. It's very exciting. And I'm going to click this, save this, and I'll save everything. And so now I currently have clicked no product, but magically, as soon as I click this, boom, you have clicked orange. Great. Okay, so that's how you change variables. So what happens if I create, I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to change the value. So this is now going to be apples, and then I'll change the action as well. So it set the variable to apples, and I will save this. Yes. Orange, apples, oranges, apples. Great. Ooh, one's plural, one's not. I'm going to change that. I'm going to go to oranges, and I'm going to change this because we want to sell more than one orange, right? Okay, so now that's great and all that this changes, but what if we want something else to happen? Well, that's easy to do as well. So for example, say we have an online store and someone's clicked something, we want to populate a SKU in the background and then have their URL point to the SKU that the user is interested in. Well, you can do that as well, because things like the URL type hotspot also support dynamic variables. So you can swap in dynamic URLs. So let's say we go to https google.com, and then if you put in a Q, which is their little shortcut for what you're querying on, we can do something like product and close that up. So now we can say, find out more about product. Okay. And when they click this, it's going to go to Google. And should we change the icon? Let's change the icon and to this guy. Okay, so oranges, apples. So if we now click this, we're going to go to Google, and it's pre-filled out oranges for us. And this could be, of course, an online store or anything else you want. Any URL can be customized. And again, if I click apples, find out more about apples, boom. Now we've been sent to Google, and we're automatically searching for apples. Okay, so now let's go and we'll look at one of the other things that variables have, which is, if I create a new one, I'm going to call this, oh, look at this, example score. Let's create a score one, shall we? And this is going to be a number, and the default value is going to be 0 on group change. What is this? Let's do it. It controls what happens to this variable when the user navigates to this snap group coming from a snap in a previous group. Let's say we are creating some sort of online safety quiz or something like that, and the user has to get a minimum score. However, you don't want to have to create one group for everything, because the test entails multiple groups that you've set up. So what you could do is you can create a score variable, and they can go through all the snaps in group A, and the score will increment. And then when they visit group B, or they go to a snap in group B, you would also have a product defined in there. What this is going to do is you can say, let's just keep the value. So if group B has a score variable as well, you know what? It's just going to keep incrementing that one. You can have group variables as standalone, as in they'll reset as soon as you enter a new group, depending on what you're doing, or you can keep the value. And that's what this means. So let's keep the value. And what we'll do is we're going to go into, remember this was score, and it's a number, and we're going to keep it. And we're going to go into group B now as well, which has these same guys, named differently though, so we'll be able to figure out where we are. And I'm going to create a variable in here as well. And I'm going to create score, right? Number, keep the value, and add that. So now group B has a score variable, and group A has a score variable. And if I go into my overlays here, what we can do is I've created a couple buttons here already. Do they need to be buttons? Well, no, they don't need to be buttons. Let's, oh, I know what I've done. They're locked. That's why I can't click them. I will unlock these, double click, and now we're editing. And what I'll do is I'll be like, your score is score. And I don't really need this guy. So we can just have this. And it's set because the parent is set. We'll just leave it at this. Great. Save that. Save that. And if I go back into my group, for group 1, I'm going to go and I'm going to assign the overlay via the properties panel. Your score is 0, right? Because by default, the score was 0. So let's say I go to my apples guy here. And because you can have multiple actions, I'm just going to layer another action on here just so we can see. And what I'll do is I'll say set variable value. On click, I would like to change score. And now because we're a number, we have different options. And so we can say set variable to like a number, or we can increment it. Or if it's a bad answer, we can decrement it as well. So we're going to increment by 1. I'll say, great, let's do that. And I'll get out of edit mode. And now if I click this, apples, my score is now incrementing, right? Every time I click it. Okay, perfect. So now what happens if I go to my other group, group B, and what I'm going to do, I'll just cheat. And by cheat, I mean be efficient. I'm going to change the snap overlay to Tim's overlay, which is the one I had created there. So now all the snaps in here are just going to show this overlay by default. And you can see here the score is 0 because I exited out of things and came back in. However, if I go back in here and I make another hotspot that's going to go to, this is going to be a snap hotspot. I'm going to go to group B this time, the number 1. And that's all I really want to do. And I can save this and I can increment my score a little bit. So I'm at 5 and then I go to group B. Ooh, and you can see here that my score is now still 5 and I'm in a completely different group. So I can keep doing my quiz or whatever I'm doing, right? If I had changed that variable to say reset, the score would have reset back to 0. So it's depending on how you want to work and kind of what you're setting up. Okay, so that's a very high level overview of what a variable is, how you can use them in SeekBeak, the types of variables, and what onGroup change does.